Man, does it feel good to be back. I have not done a tutorial in a long time, and it actually does feel pretty good to get back into the swing of things a little bit. I think the last tutorial I did was a couple years ago, and recently I got hit up in the forums. Somebody messaged me asking for more details on one of the old features I had created for a sample game that I was kind of throwing together. It was like a post-processing object-based thermal imaging effect that I had created for the camera. So in the little sample that I had created, and I'll show you guys here in just a second, um, I had objects that were differentiating depending on the material and depending on an alpha channel set for my thermal. When you turn on the thermal effect in the post-processing volume, you would be able to specify cold objects versus hot objects versus the medium range objects. And because I got hit up so much in the forums, and just recently, now that I'm getting back in the swing of things, I decided to go ahead and throw together a tutorial so that I can give that to them, and if anyone out there can benefit from it, then all the better. So it does feel good to be back. And one thing that I'll show you guys, this was a little sample demo that I had created a while back for my little, test project. And essentially, what this does is the character brings out a thermal imaging scanner from his backpack, and it turns on, and you can see I can differentiate between hot and cold objects right here. So that's essentially what the feature is. What we're going to do today, we're not going to do all that. We're just going to do a sample of like this, and it still gives you the same effect, just with, you can implement all the other stuff however you want. So let's go ahead and get started. So there's a couple of things that we do need to kind of discuss. We're going to be using a lookup table, and this is the lookup table color grading texture that I had created a while back. And just make sure you set the texture group to color lookup table here. And other than that, just follow along with the tutorial, and hope this helps somebody. First thing we need, this is just a standard third-person template, nothing special about it. It just comes stock with one of the templates that Unreal Engine threw together, and this is a good starting place for any of our, any of these tutorials that I do. One of the things that I want to kind of touch on too is that everything that you're going to see in this tutorial you can do directly from the engine, other than this lookup table color grading texture that I had created in Photoshop. I'll probably post a link of this in the video in the description, so you guys can use this. Basically all it is it's the color ranges of the values that you're going to see in the post-processing effect. You have these dark, deep blues for the cool colors, and just like a thermal imaging scanner, it goes all the way down to red, which is really hot. And so we're going to be able to set our objects up at runtime to determine if it's hot or cold, and hope this helps somebody. This is a really cool feature that I created years ago, and I'm using 4.21 now, the latest version of the engine. When I did this, we were on like 4.7, 4.8, somewhere around there, and a lot of things have changed since then, especially with the post-processing. They kind of got rid of that. I forget which one it was. It was, I think, scene color, and they had got rid of that unless the surface domain, material domain, is surface. So you can't use scene color anymore. So you have to use that post-processing input 0, and that's pretty much all that changed. But you have to kind of attack it a little bit different. So this tutorial is up to date with the latest 4.21, and let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we'll need to do is go ahead and drop in a post-processing volume. So you can just go ahead and drag it in anywhere. It doesn't matter where it's at. It's going to be unbound when we turn on the feature, and then when we turn it off, it's going to be bound. So to start off, let's go ahead and go to miscellaneous. let's see, hold on. Things have changed around. We'll just search for it. It's a lot easier just to do it that way. It should be default bound. Okay, perfect. Yep. I'm going to leave that off. Next thing we need to do is go ahead and do color grading. And I will pick the texture LUT Thermal. That's what I named it. Actually, you can go ahead and turn off the color grading LUT there. The only thing you really need to do in the color grading aspect of it is just to throw in your texture there. Lookup table. Let's see. So for now, that's all we're going to need. We got to come back to this after we create our post-processing material. Let's see. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create, inside the engine, some basic geometry shapes that we can apply this material to, and then we can change at runtime. So I'm just going to drag in a basic box here. We can make this a little smaller. Go ahead and make it 64 by 64 by 64. And drop this down a little bit into the ground there. You can go ahead and create a static mesh from this. You can just leave it default. It's no problem. And then we will create a material called m_base. And then what we can do actually is apply that here. For now, all we're going to need is a constant 3 vector to apply just a simple color to it. This can be a texture if you'd like. And in the sample that you saw my crates, my boxes that had a wood texture on it. And that's important too, because we're going to be able to show that even with the heat signature that gets picked up in the thermal, you still want to, if you want, I preferred it, showing the texture underneath all that red just so it doesn't lose that detail. So we're able to merge that together with this implementation that I came up with. So let's make it just like a nice blue, like a soft blue. That'd be good. Okay, now you can see our object down there changed. And let's go ahead and do Alt click and drag. And you can drag a couple of these around. And again, like I said, these are actual objects now that you can see that were built into the engine. I just created a static mesh directly from the engine itself and then applied a material to it. So far, so good. And the next thing we're going to have to create is a material parameter collection. And that is here. And you can just call this MPC_thermal. And there are 2 specific elements that you're going to have in here. You're going to have 1 scalar and 1 vector. And I'll describe what each one of these does. The first one this is going to be the thermal alpha. It's going to be our alpha to determine how strong the emissive effect is going to apply to this when it shows up in our post-processing effect at the end. By default, you can just set that to 0. That's no problem. And then down here in the vector parameters, there we go. We are going to call this thermal emissive color. And we'll go ahead and just up the alpha channel on that to black. And what else? Next, we need to create our post-processing material. Actually, before we do that, we'll go ahead and apply our material parameter collection to this material here. So to do that, just type in collection. It'll bring it up and select your MPC thermal. First one we'll do is emissive color. And then the second one here, type in collection again, if I could type properly. Same thing. And then this one is going to be alpha. Okay, so we're going to have to linear interpolate. So we'll do a lerp here. And then we're going to apply a Fresnel. And what helped me, these are, you can follow along here. So I'm setting the exponent to 5, that's default, but the base refraction in, I'm changing that to a 3. I got better results with that. You can play around with these numbers, but that's what I did. And it's going to be applied to the B. And our alpha here is going to be plugged in here. Okay, so basically all this does is just go straight to the emissive color. You don't have to do anything else with this. Now, just to explain a little bit kind of how this works, you don't see anything on this yet, right? If you were to say break link here, you can already tell that there's some emissive color on here. Let's bump it up to 1, a little higher. Let's just keep going. You can see how bright it gets just with that emissive color applied. If you have 0, it's going to go back to blue, right? So this 1 here, so this thermal alpha we're going to be able to set. The reason why we made it like this is so we can change it in blueprints at runtime whenever we need. So this is going to kind of drive that alpha, emissive alpha setting for us. So go ahead and plug that back in, make sure you apply, save. And then the next thing we'll need to do is create our post-processing material. So go ahead and create a new material here. And this one we can just call it M thermal PP. I know a couple of you guys probably have a joke about that already. So the very first thing that this is going to do is we need to change this to post-process. This is going to give us kind of our starting point for our material to show up. And we have to do a couple things. So scene textures and scene depth, and we got to grab, kind of create a custom depth that we can kind of go off of that will allow us to get the effect that we want on this. So let's go ahead and start with, we'll do the custom depth first. Nope. We'll do a scene texture, and we will go down here to custom depth, and we're going to leave that default. We'll go ahead and mask this out. Just grab the component mask and do RGB values, and we are going to divide this by a very small number. We'll try that for now. See if that works. And that does it for this section. We're going to put this up into a lerp eventually, but I'm going to kind of walk you through all the different steps that you got to take first before you start connecting everything up. Next thing you got to do is scene depth. Now this one can state coordinates. You can do offset fraction and whatnot, but we need these X and Y values, and that's all we need. So we're going to go ahead and divide. Divide. And then we'll do the first one. Let's do 1,000 because we want to get a really small number to get that nice scene depth range that we need. And then 3,000 here. And let's see. We'll go ahead and grab constant 3 vector. This is going to give us our different ranges of values. And as you can see here, it's like a nice kind of a royal purple kind of color here. So go ahead and do that one for the first one. And then we'll do another constant 3 vector here. And this one's kind of a lighter purple. Go ahead and close these up. And then you have to lerp these together, A and B. And then we are going to go ahead and clamp this off. Should be good. Let's pull some of these back here. And then we'll plug this into the alpha, the first clamp. We'll go ahead and do the second clamp here. And you can leave the clamps default 0 and 1 for the min and max. That's no problem. And then our third constant vector that we're going to need is going to be kind of a more bluish tint. And these are going to give us our nice depths of cool colors, and then we're going to offset the red. And you'll kind of see how that comes together as we start moving along here. So this one, we'll go ahead, because we have to connect this to this and to this, right? So we're going to go ahead and set up another lerp here. Plug this into B and this into alpha. And then now that we have these two sections connected up, we got to do this one more time. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and use our scene texture here. And this is what I was talking about. By default, it's scene color here. But if you notice, if I go over here and I do let me just leave this the same for right now, right? So we'll go ahead and get a mask. Get the component mask, and this one is going to come out. I'll show you what happens if you just leave this out. Oh, also need to bring in our lookup table texture, and then plug this into the UVs. Okay, and then if you plug this directly into the emissive color here, you'll notice it pops up. Scene color lookups are only available when material domain is equal to surface. So this is very verbose error handling and error messages that show you what's wrong. So that's the thing that changed. So before you were able to use scene color without any problems, but now you got to just change this to post-processing input, and you can already tell. Look at that. Look at all those different colors, and it's kind of got this pulsing effect on it, which is kind of cool. I've never seen that like that. I usually build it the other way, so I never really see that part, but it's pretty cool. So you might be able to get something out of this type of functionality as well. It's pretty cool. All right, so anyways, let's go ahead and lerp this again, because we kind of need to get all of these pieces together. This is going to be our final lerp, but we're going to take this stuff up here, plug that into this lerp. This is going to go into the B value there, and this is going to go into the alpha. Okay, and we'll go ahead and save that off. You can already tell. So these are like crazy values right here that you see. And actually, let me think. Don't think we need anything else. Oh yeah, we do. We have to clamp this. That is why it is giving us those crazy colors right there. So let's go ahead and pump that up into the alpha. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that's exactly what we want. So it's showing the range of scale of these different colors that we set up here, right? So depending on the scene depth, it fades into these nice colors. And that's what we want. Okay, now all we really need to do is go into our level, and we'll be able to start setting up this functionality. One cool thing that we can do now is if we check the bound here, notice how you get that nice scale across everything. There's already a post-processing volume in the template, which is fine. You can just piggyback off of that. You don't need to delete it unless you need to for some reason, but this should be fine. This is exactly what we need for right now. So let's go ahead, and now that we know that it works for what we need to go ahead and set this up in Blueprints to be able to start changing some of these values on the fly as we need them to finish implementing our little feature here. So for now, go ahead and open up the level blueprint and bring this over. Let's see. We can go ahead and let's just go ahead and create a reference to that. And then, because this is oh, come on, what is it? Yeah, there we go. Just because it's thermal, we'll name it T. And then we got to make sure that we got to check get the bounds. So in the new versions, it's called infinite extent, but it's, you know, the Boolean values are still unbound. So we're going to go ahead and check for this. So on press, let's go ahead and do a branch. And essentially all we want to do is toggle back and forth between bound and unbound. And then depending on if you're bound or unbound, we need to do certain things, right? So the first thing we got to do is, once we check for that, we'll go ahead and set up these little features. Set bounds. Nope. Break that link. We need it separate. You can use flip-flop and other stuff, but this is a little easier to understand for people that may not know a lot about blueprints or are kind of new to it. So this is just a branch. It's an if-else statement. So if this post-processing volume bound value, its boolean, is, if it's unbound, if that's true, then make sure to set this unbound value to false. And if it's false, set it to bound. So, oh, sorry, there we go. And essentially, you only want this to run on the T key being pressed. So let's go ahead and follow that up here, and we're going to make sure this works. So this should actually give us a little functionality already. So if we press the T key, you can see it just swaps back and forth, and that's exactly what you want. And if you notice, if you go over here and you start playing it, you have your T key, you'll notice the execution path shows up in those little orange lines with the little orange balls going into it. That's your program flow, application flow, game flow. So from here, let's go ahead and close out. And then we need to get the original material so that we don't actually mess up, and we can go back to the material that we want it to. You don't have to do it this way. This is the way that I did it, just so that you can keep the consistency and you can keep swapping back and forth. Let's go ahead and do that. Actually, let's try it without, because I don't know anymore if you actually have to do that. Let's try. Let's try to do it without. So, if we have, let's say, yeah, let's go ahead and do that then. Let's see. Actually, what we can do here, go ahead and we'll go ahead and do this. We'll just call this BP box, right? Might not have to do this actually, but we'll go ahead and do it anyways. We'll create that BP, and then we'll drag these in. Let's make sure our texture is actually set on it. So let's go over here, static mesh, go ahead and apply our base material, compile, save, and we'll drag a couple of these in. So now it has a specific class attached to it. It's a little easier for us to go through and find stuff. So we'll go ahead and get all actors of class, and we will do BP box here, right? And from here we'll do a for each. And this is basically looping through and getting all the actors that are part of BP box, and we're going to perform an action on all of them, whatever is in our level that applies to BP box. We'll go ahead and do that here, and then from the for each loop, we're going to go ahead and get the static mesh. Nope. Well, yeah, we can do that. That's fine. We still need the static mesh. That's all right. And we're going to go ahead and set material. set that. Now, we need to set the scalar parameter value. Now this one, since we created our file, it's really easy. You just pick the material parameter collection. You pick alpha, because we're getting a scalar value. It doesn't show up the other one because the other one was a vector. And then you set your value here. So we're going to keep the 0 for that one. The next one up here, do the same exact thing. We can actually just copy all this. And we will go ahead and set this to 1. It should be good, so let's test this out. So if we press T, oh, now look at that. How beautiful is that? That's really cool. So as you can see, you have all these mid-range colors, things that are kind of in the shade automatically, get that blue tint. But then you have these that are red, and you can get those heat signatures from that. So that's about it, guys. I don't think there's anything else to explain. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did and you want me to do more, then please give a like, subscribe, share the video out, and if you, whatever tutorial you want me to do next, just let me know and I can try to whip things together. I'm going to try to get back in the swing of things. I'm working on 2 game projects right now, 1 contract and 1 under my own company, and I'm getting really busy. So I'm going to try to do more of these when I can, but because this was specifically requested of me in the forums, I decided to go ahead and show you this tutorial. And we're not too far in, 27 minutes. You'll get it done in a lot faster. You can get it done in 5 minutes if you just go through this real quick. So thank you, everybody. Aloha, and have a beautiful day. Hope your 2019 is going well. Take it easy. All right, one thing I did want to actually mention that I forgot to is that you want to make sure you put your post-processing material that you had created inside of here. So we'll go ahead and choose an asset reference, and we'll get the material thermal PP. You want to make sure that this one right here is actually set to 0. You don't need that on here right now. And then there we go. And that gives a little better. Just make sure that everything's in order. Okay? Alright guys, take it easy.